back to the Spoiled Rotten Movie Review Show. How's your week been? You have a good time? Has it been rough? I know for some people it's been a rough week. Others, it's been pretty, fast going. We've had a lot of fun. So, hope it went well for you guys. But today, we're going to get into some spoiler-filled movie review about The Mummy, this weekend's big release and the start of the dark universe that Universal is trying to create. Now, before I get into this movie, before I say anything, before I even speak a word about this film, if you have not seen The Mummy, I advise you to go out and see it. I'm going to go into full spoilers on this film. All of my podcasts are completely spoiler-filled. I don't feel the need to restrain myself as far as plot points or anything. So if you have not seen the film, go out, see it, come back to this video, and then tell us what you thought about the film in the comments below. Love to hear your thoughts. But I'm going to give my thoughts here. If you don't want to be spoiled, head on out before you come back. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk about The Mummy this weekend. So this film starts off in basically like Middle Ages England, and it shows a group of knights burying a dead knight with a stone, and that's all we get for that first opening scene. That's just like a little tidbit, and then flash forwards to modern day England, where they uncover the tomb where the stone is buried and everything in it. And they don't find the stone yet, but they do find all these tombs of these old crusaders who were stuck in this tomb because they're trying to build a railway system underneath England. And we get you see all these people going into this tomb, and they're looking around, and they're trying to see what's going on in there. And they don't really understand it, but then a group led by Russell Crowe, who we don't get his name until later, what his character name is, and I'll save it. But we don't know who he is or anything. He just comes in, he's in tomb, he says, we're taking over this site now. They've moved the drilling site for the train elsewhere. We're taking over this, and we're going to see what's in it. And he basically, Russell Crowe's character gives us the backstory on the mummy, Amenet, and why they're here, basically why Amenet's important to the story, why she's the mummy and everything, and that she killed her family and everyone and sacrificed herself to Set to become king, but she never finished the sacrifice so she can become queen and basically unleash Set onto the world and that sort of thing. And that's okay. So the story behind that's a cool idea. The problem with it, though, is that they, instead of just letting that play out throughout the movie and let us figure it out for ourselves like a normal film would, they give it all to us at once, and they naturally let it play out as the film goes on. So if you cut that entire scene of Russell Crowe explaining the mummy, we still get the same ideas and concepts later in the film, through Tom Cruise's character, with flashbacks and with different sources, like the lady that Tom Cruise is with, who is basically an archaeologist looking for the site. We get all that info later on in the film, so we really don't need Russell Crowe's narration, but it decides to give it to us anyway, and I thought that was a bit of a bad call on their part. I think if you're going to do a story like this, you cut out that narration entirely, or you rework the script so that the narration at the beginning works, because the way it works, it's clunky, and it makes the rest of the reveals to the character uninteresting because we already know that reveal and stuff. It would be more better if that just got cut entirely. We just see Russell Crowe go into that tomb, and then we get cutbacks to Amenet, and we learn more about her character as the film goes on. That, I think, would have been more interesting than just what they decided to do with this. But then it goes on from there. After they explain the story of the mummy and why it's important, we move on to present-day Iraq, where two soldiers are searching for some ancient treasure that Tom Cruise knows about in the area, and they're searching for, but it's being held by basically by insurgents in the area. So they go in, they get caught, and they're put down by snipers, and Eventually, both him and his friend decide, okay, we can't stay here any longer. I'm calling in an airstrike so that we don't get bombed to death by these insurgents. So if we get bombed to death, it's from our own kind and not from insurgents killing us. And eventually, one of the Hellfire missiles that comes down on the town that they're stuck in lands in this like tomb area that's in Iraq. They go down into it, and they find Aminet's tomb, basically. And it's right off the bat here that we start to see like Aminet and her power. Like they show that they've locked her away inside of like a cave of mercury and embalmed her and stuff in there, and put like statues all around to make sure that like she didn't get out. And then by Tom Cruise and this archaeological lady and Jake Johnson, who is Tom Cruise's friend in this film, opening the tomb, they're unlocking this mummy, and a lot of bad things start happening almost immediately. Like the moment that Tom Cruise strikes open the mummy, a bunch of horde of spiders come out of the walls, these camel spiders, and they start crawling all around, which immediately made me think of the 99 Mummy movie, when one of the guys just gets surrounded by spiders that like went into their skin and everything, and it was awful. But here they don't do that. They bite Jake Johnson, and he's like, that one bit me, and he's trying to shoot him, and they're like, don't shoot, you're in the middle of a tomb, it cave in on you any second there, don't do that. But he gets bit by one of the spiders, and they're basically, they take out Aminet's sarcophagus out of the tomb, and they're flying it back. And almost immediately as they get the sarcophagus out, there's a sandstorm that starts coming in and attacking them. And that makes me wonder that, like, at this point, okay, you've been attacked by spiders. There's a scene right after they pull it out of the sarcophagus out of the tomb that crows are, like, just everywhere, and they're, like, going, ah, ah, ah. And then, you know, you have this huge, gigantic sandstorm that's trying to catch up to them as they're getting the sarcophagus out. At this point, though, I think you throw that sarcophagus out of the air, like, because you have to think, okay, all those bad things happening aren't a coincidence. Like, I know it's a movie, and, you know, you can put up with whatever, but, like, I feel at that point you have to be like, okay, something weird's going on. It's not just like, that all of a sudden all these big things bad happen. It happened exactly after we pulled the sarcophagus out of the tomb, and it's just been continually happening. Like, there's no mistake. It's this sarcophagus that's basically cursed or whatever. You know, like, I have to assume that you would immediately go, nope, and throw it out the airlock of the airplane they're carrying it on. I don't get why they kept it, the sarcophagus. It just seems like a bad move to keep it in there after everything that happened. You have to assume, like, okay, maybe something bad's happening here. A bit of a minor plot point, plot hole. I don't think they thought that really through, but whatever, fine. You have it on the plane now. And they're all just, like, sitting on the plane. You know, Tom Cruise is starting to get visions of Aminet talking to him about being her chosen one. And being the one she wants to use to bring Set back into the world. And while he is having those visions, his archaeological friend is like studying the sarcophagus and like writing down like everything that's like written on like the hieroglyphs and everything. And Jake Johnson dies basically, and no one notices, which I thought was just the most insane thing. Is like he's getting worse and worse as the plane's going on, and no one notices, and then he just kind of dies on the plane, and no one cares. Listen, Jake Johnson's character's not that good in this film. He's a bit weird when it comes to the plot, and he's kind of just there to be Tom Cruise's best friend. But I don't think they would be so harsh, or that they're so annoyed by him that no one would notice he would die on the plane. I feel like they would at least be like, hey, buddy, you okay? No one says anything to him. He just slowly dies on the plane and then ends up becoming a zombie. And then when you see him next, he's like he's taking like a knife and trying to open the sarcophagus off of its restraints. I don't get why no one was even looking at Jake Johnson or like talking to him. Like there's a bunch of people around. Someone would have noticed he's like getting pale or something's wrong with him, trying to get him medicine or something. Like I don't get why no one noticed that Jake Johnson was slowly dying. That made no sense to me. I would feel realistically someone would have noticed that he was like getting worse as they were getting to the plane, and then someone would have noticed that he's slowly dying on the plane. Like that wasn't very well explained out. And then when he starts opening the cave, Ernie Hudson, the general, who is amazing in this film, I love Ernie Hudson, but sadly, he tries to basically tell him, hey, knock it off, stop trying to, knock it off, Jake Johnson, stop trying to open the sarcophagus out of its restraints, and he gets stabbed to death for it, which is probably the cheapest way to kill Ernie Hudson off. Yeah, it's really kind of a cheap way. Like, there's a lot of things in here that just feel cheap or contrived and don't feel well fleshed out. We're going to see this a lot throughout this film. As I continue on, it's just like, and this happens. Why? That's what they wanted to happen in the film. It's not necessarily a well thought out plot point or something that was like, no, this needs to be a thing. They're just like, I don't know, he dies and then he stabs the general. That's okay. And then basically Tom Cruise gets into a situation where he has to kill Jake Johnson, even though he's already dead. He's technically like a mummy zombie, which you'll see a lot of in this film, are mummy zombies, which is an interesting thing because aren't mummies technically zombies? They're just Egyptian. I don't know. It's a weird idea. But once he kills Jake Johnson, there's this weird comedic bit where he's like, he shot him twice already, and then he's just kind of like out of fear shoots him again, and it didn't really hit because he just killed his best friend, and then now he's just shooting him again for a laugh. I don't know. They have a lot of weird beats in this film for like humor and things of that nature. It's honestly just a lot of weird like things that don't make sense or were not well thought out, or were just like, I don't know, let's put a humor beat in here because we need a humor beat, and it just feels like they inserted things into the film that they needed. And once they finally kill Jake Johnson, that's not the end of their troubles. They go to the pilot's deck and they see the scene from the trailer where there's a bunch of birds that form in like a group, and they attack the plane, and the plane's starting to go down, and it's all tumbling around. It's doing that really cool. It's basically the scene from the trailer that you've seen, where they keep tumbling around in the plane, and then the plane crashes down in Oxford. But before he does, Tom Cruise is able to save his archaeological friend, get her the parachute she needs, and then try to fall. Then she basically dies on the plane, crashing while he saves his archaeological friend, and Jake Johnson's already dead, so no use saving him. But they crash there, and they think he's dead. And then the next scene, he's in a morgue, and it's actually a really cool scene. I like the concept there, where there's like a bunch of dead bodies, and for just like a long beat, there's no sound, no nothing. It's just the long shot of the hospital and the morgue. But then it's followed by a comedy beat where he's talking to the ghost version of Jake Johnson, who's basically following him around in his head and basically going like, "Oh, Amanet's gonna get you, man. Like, there's no running from Amanet. You just gotta follow what she says and does. Like, I'm gonna give her to you." And it's like weird stuff like that. And then his archaeological friend comes in along with a couple of doctors to see, like, to identify the bodies, and he's naked, and he's like, "What's going on here? Like, who was the guy in charge here?" And I was like, okay, another weird comedy beat put in after a really cool horrific idea of like someone coming awake in a morgue. And that's kind of where it is. Like, okay, for The Mummy, you're doing a horror film that's kind of also an adventure film, but it's also kind of it has some comedy beats to it. The original Mummy did that very well, and I can see it working well in here. You just have to, place it in the right specs and it'll work. You have to know when to time it out. This film doesn't really have a good sense of timing it out. It feels like every scene You have to have this beat, this beat, this beat, even though for one scene, there really should just be one beat, but they're trying to throw in like 3 or 4 beats in there where it's like, okay, there's the horror beat, there's the action beat, there's the comedy beat, boom, 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 boom. It's like, just slow your roll. Just take one beat at a time. Let each scene play out, because you're doing a horror film, or a horror franchise series that you want to do. If you want to do that, you're not going to be able to do it like a superhero movie, like Marvel. Like even if you want to do a universe, don't do it like Marvel, because Marvel is superheroes. Superheroes films are fast paced and fun. You're doing a monster movies that are, based in horror, based on like very scary imagery and things like that nature. Don't base your film off superhero movies. Base them off horror films where they take their time. There's a horror beat and, a couple comedy beats, because, this is The Mummy and everyone remembers the remake that was kind of funny and stuff. So maybe throw in a couple comedy beats, but have those be fleshed out on their own. Maybe if you're going to use them, maybe throw them during the action scenes more than the horror scenes. Because like for the action scenes, comedy works great because it's people, trying to get out all their anxiety while working to beat enemies together. With horror scenes, especially during the scene during morgue, it's wildly misplaced. Because now you're taking out this very tense scene and just doing it with light penis joke humor, or, just like humor that doesn't fit a more horrific setting, like waking up in a morgue. If this was a comedy movie, I'd wake up in a, even Baywatch had a good joke while in the morgue where, he got stuck under like a fat guy or whatever, and that was funny. But that's Baywatch, that's a comedy. This is not a comedy, it's a horror film, and mixed with action and a little comedy. But if you're going to do that, you have to let the horror scenes play out, because that's what people are going to remember about a movie about the Mummy. It's going to be the horrific scenes. Even from that 99 original, what people remember the most are the more horrific scenes, like the guy having like the spider crawl into his skin and stuff. That's horrific imagery, but that's what people remember the most about monster movies and things like that. It's the things that scared them. Every time they have a chance to scare someone, they immediately go to a comedy beat or an action beat. Whereas I believe action and comedy should be their own thing, and then the horror should stand out on its own, which I think what the 99 Mummy did very well. But this film, it's trying, I think, too hard to get all those beats in there that the original Mummy did without doing well on its own. Just trying. You know what? You don't even need comedy for the Mummy. I don't think you do. I mean, you can still throw in jokes and stuff. I'm not saying go full DC, Batman versus Superman, where there's no jokes at all. But be okay to have less humor. Like, just be more serious and like not have to constantly throw in humor. Like, I get it's Tom Cruise and he's a humorous, funny guy. But you don't need it. Like, I think it's fine on its own. But I guess those are just my thoughts on like pacing and the timing of this film, which I'll get into more, I guess, as we go on. But like, that's just my main original thoughts on this, is that they're trying to shove in too much too early, and it's not working, and you can feel it almost immediately when you hear it. So he awakens and he's talking to his doctor friend about Amunet, and she gives him basically a little bit of the backstory, a brief version of the backstory that we got at the beginning from Russell Crowe's character, which I think honestly, doing the Amunet flashbacks that Tom Cruise is getting in this film mixed with that little bit you get from the archaeological girl, I think you could immediately string together the entire story of Amunet just from those two pieces alone. You didn't need that original Russell Crowe beat, but again, like I said, they decided to go with that and then string it out throughout. Whatever, I mean, that's fine. But we do get a little brief sanitized version of the Amunet backstory through the archaeological girl, and she wants to take him to Russell Crowe's character. But Tom Cruise kind of gets scared because his friend's Jake Johnson's ghost is basically haunting him and telling him like, you're cursed, you're not seeing things, Amunet's out to get you, and there's no way you can escape this, you're basically cursed forever. So he goes outside and he gets attacked by rats. And apparently there's a scene of Aminette, and she's like chasing him with rats and chasing him down, and he's getting pinned down. It's honestly a very scary scene. And I was like, oh, that's, horrific. Even the lady behind me in the movie theater was like, oh my gosh, that's horrific. And it's like, yeah, no, that is horrific. That is scary to be pinned down by that many rats. But then again, it's followed by a comedy beat. It's followed by it turning out that he wasn't at all being chased down by rats, but he was just like stumbling through the streets of London outside this pub and almost got run over by a car. And it's like, okay, so we're no longer in horror land, we're just in more comedy land. And you expect to hear that a lot because we're only about halfway through this film. And it just gets worse from here. Because honestly, the first act, it has a lot of contrivances, it has a lot of plot holes and things, but I was kind of enjoying it. I didn't like the whole Russell Crowe explaining at the beginning, but I kind of got into it. I got into the setup of like them finding the thing, and it's from the first Mummy, obviously, and there's a lot of that is just taken from that and replaced here. But I could kind of see this working out in the end, but it gets worse. It gets worse from here. The first act is honestly the best, most well put together act into the film. And even that's messy, So, if I get to the second act here, they go to find the corpse, the sarcophagus with Aminette, and find her body there. And they're going to near the crash site, but as they get there, they divert. And the archaeological girl goes, "Where are you going? The main crash site's down over there." And he's like, "No, I know the body's here." And she's like, "No, the body's out there with the main crash site, and I'm going down there whether you or not." And she goes out and she leaves. And he's like, "Well, why do I think the body's here? Because I know the body's here, but why do I think that?" And it turns out that Aminette is there, the mummy, and she puts it down with some minions that she's gotten beforehand from like police officers who went to find and went into the main crash site. She turned them into her slaves and basically pins down Tom Cruise. Is about to release Set with her magical knife, but she realizes that the stone on the top of the knife is missing, and that's the part that helps release Set into the world. So she has to look for the stone, but in the meantime, she's mad at Tom Cruise, and through a fairly good action scene, I'd say. Like, it's pretty neat. They get away from the mummy, and they start driving into a car, and he's like, the archaeological girl's like, she's in your head, she's talking to you, that's why you thought the body was in there. She's in your head, she's talking to you. And he's like, "No, that's crazy, she's not in my head at all. Like, why would you even say that?" And he ends, because and they're driving out away from the mummy, and then he drives right back to the mummy, and he realizes, oh my goodness, she is in my head, she made me drive right back to her. So they're able to finally escape in this ambulance that got left there around the main crash site. So they stole an ambulance, and it's great. And they're able to escape, but eventually they crash, and Aminette catches up with them. So that leads to Aminette almost killing both of them, even though she doesn't want to kill Tom Cruise, but basically almost catching Tom Cruise and killing his archaeological girlfriend over here. But then a group of soldiers basically capture Aminette and then conk out Tom Cruise and archaeological girl, and they get taken to this science lab place, what's being run by Russell Crowe's character, who we find out is Dr. Jekyll, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So Dr. Henry Jekyll is basically this guy who became a monster and is evil, but he's able to control it through drugs and stuff. But if he's not able to, he turns into Mr. Hyde. And he's studying other monsters and evil in the world and trying to how to control that through his group. I forget what they actually call it. Oh, it's Prodigium. He calls his group Prodigium, which is comes from a Latin warning about monsters. Which, okay, that's cool. Prodigium. I like the name. That's fair enough. And this is honestly the part of the film where I think it stops becoming a mummy movie. It starts becoming a movie setting up the dark universe. It's like, okay, Act 1, we're setting up the mummy. Act 2, we're setting up the dark universe. Act 3, we are going to finish the mummy. And then at the end, we'll build up the dark universe even more. I think that's a mistake. I think, honestly, this is the one case in which I would copy Marvel to the point where I would say, like, for this first film, the Mummy film, you do just a film about the mummy. And then at the very end, well, you can still have Dr. Jekyll. Like, I'm fine with Dr. Jekyll and Prodigium being in there. But keep all that stuff for the end. Just maybe briefly hint at, like, oh, there's a Dr. Jekyll who wants to talk to you. Maybe have Russell Crowe talk to Tom Cruise and be like, be very careful, son. Monsters like these are, hard to fight. Sometimes you have to be a monster yourself. That I could see working. And then at the end, you tease Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You talk, I guess the next one they want to do is Bride of Frankenstein. You tease that. But make it the Mummy movie and then just put in a sprinkling of universe plot. Don't make it Act 1, mummy plot. Act 2, dark universe plot. Act 3, more mummy plot. And then sprinkling at the end. That's too much dark universe. You're actually taking an act from the mummy away from it and then putting it to universe growth and, like, shaping, universe shaping. And I don't like that. I think that all 3 acts should be saved for the mummy. You could throw in dark universe stuff here and there, absolutely. I actually don't even mind the Russell Crowe's in the film and he's talking to Tom Cruise about monsters and things, but I think they spent so much time at Prodigium that it becomes its own act. And honestly, I think it's the problem with the second act. It's too much dark universe. They threw in way too much for that. You have to cut that down. You have to actually make a solid second act. You can't just make the second act dark universe and just kind of have mummy here and there. Make an actually good second act. And they don't do that. It's kind of sad. I was kind of hoping for more, and it wasn't. Most of this is him talking to Dr. Jekyll while Amunet is contained, talking to him about monsters, and then we get a reveal that Dr. Jekyll wants to kill Tom Cruise because he doesn't want Seth to come into the world, and if they kill Tom Cruise, there's no possibility Seth can come into the world. You can be the cure, and that he doesn't have to do it. So Tom Cruise obviously is upset about it. He doesn't want to die. He kind of has this weird kind of be like, wait, that's the plan? You're killing me? I don't like that plan. Can we have a new plan? Again, taking a little bit more of a comedy beat out of it. But he basically he holds Dr. Jekyll's chemicals, keeps him from turning into Mr. Hyde ransom until they make a new plan. But he realizes he's going to turn into Mr. Hyde, which is even worse. And then he tries his hand in the back, but by that time it's too late. And then they have a fight scene between Mr. Hyde and Tom Cruise. Eventually ending with Tom Cruise injecting the chemical into Mr. Hyde and turning him back into Dr. Jekyll. So, yeah, okay. That's, I guess that works. I like the fight scene between Hyde and Tom Cruise. It's fun. I honestly, Russell Crowe does a great job as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but he's in the film too much. I think they try to overdo it with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, even though he's a great character and I'd love to see him, do his own film or whatnot. But it was just too much for a movie about the mummy. You threw in too much Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm fine throwing in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in the mummy movie. Like, that's a cool idea. But you threw in too much of him. Like, I would have him only in as much as Sam Jackson was in to Iron Man. Just a little bit, a scene. You set it up a little bit, but you make people earn it by going to watch it and saying, this is what we want. Don't basically give what they want in the first film and say, but there's more waiting. It's like, but I already kind of got what I wanted in the first film. I don't feel a need to go see the second film. Only give them enough so that they want more. This gives too much. It gives way too much. But okay, we finally get into the third act. Second act is honestly very not interesting. The only really other big thing that happens is that they find the stone, and the mummy's like, ooh, they found the stone. I don't know how I know that since I don't have telepathic powers, but they found the stone somehow. She might have seen a security camera. Like, there was like a hint at that maybe, but it's never clearly addressed. So it's just like, maybe she saw a security camera. She just knows somehow. Either way, she finds out about it. She's able to escape by basically infecting the brain of one of the security guards there, Prodigium, and turning him into a zombie and letting her go free. She escapes. She's going for the gem. Tom Cruise and Archaeological Girl are going out to get the stone before she does, because they realize if they can break the stone, then all curses will be broken and she'll die and Set won't come out. And so they go out to get the stone. There's just this is actually some good action beats in the third act here. They have her call out the sands of Egypt as her under her control, and because glass is made of sand, you see all this glass breaking, and you see it go past like window buildings and stuff. You don't see the scene that they put in all the trailers in which she forms a cloud in the shape of her face. That never happens. And I was like, oh, I wanted to see the really weird cloud CGI mummy face that you made. I mean, it's stupid, but you could at least shown that. But again, they're throwing on comedy beats where, like, you know, Tom Cruise will run through a bus that's fallen over and he'll just barely make it, and then Jake Johnson will go, wow, that was fun. No, like, no, come on, just they don't allow the action to ever settle in for a second, or the horror beats to ever settle in for a second. They're always trying to throw in like a comedy beat at the wrong time. Like, I don't mind comedy beats in action. I don't even occasionally mind comedy beats in horror. Actually, one of my favorite genres, I guess, is like horror comedy, because that's always like very funny and very cool. But this doesn't do it right. It's just like, it doesn't allow the action to go on well enough. It's not written well enough. It's not well paced enough. It's bad. It's like bad horror comedy, bad action comedy. It doesn't work. Like, what it allows the action or the horror to go alone, which it rarely does in this film. But when it does, it works a little bit. Like, it can get kind of scary, but it's hard to find those scenes because almost immediately afterwards, there's always a comedy beat, or, you know, just like a weird random like joke that doesn't make any sense or isn't well fitting. And I think that's just so frustrating about this film, because there are a lot of good things in it, especially a lot of the good things that they showed from the trailer, but they get wildly just taken down by throwing in comedy beats that don't belong. And it's frustrating to watch throughout the entire film, as like you see a lot of good ideas just get wasted by, well, we gotta throw in a comedy beat now. So they finally are able to go underneath the tunnels. They're trying to make it to the stone, but before they make it, Archaeological Girl dies, and Tom Cruise is upset. The mummy kills her, basically, and it's just him and the mummy. And that's just like, finally, you just have to accept me now, as you know. But he's like, no, this will never work between us. Which, again, a comedy beat after an action beat. I've made my complaints already about that. He's about to shatter the stone, but then that's like, wait, think about it. If you kill yourself and let Set come into the world, you can basically have the powers of Set with life and death, and you can bring back Archaeological Girl. And he thinks about it, and he's like, oh yeah, I could do that. I could be the cure for the world, the monster that the world needs. And so he stabs himself, takes on Set's powers of life and death, kills Aminette, and restores Archaeological Girl back to life. Basically, he becomes a monster. He's like, I don't know what I am anymore. like I know they're predictions coming for me, so I have to run. But you know that I love you, and I'll try to work things out or whatever. And then you have this end credit, like not end credit scene. There's no end credit scene in this film. Sorry, like we're starting up a universe, but no end credit scene. So that's a little different from Marvel. Good on you. You don't want to do end credit scenes. I personally respect that. It's a good choice. Who knows? Maybe in Bride of Frankenstein, there's an end credit scene. They'll prove me all wrong. But they're basically talking about Tom Cruise and what he's gonna be in the future. And he's like, oh, maybe he'll be good, maybe he'll be bad, light. You know, sometimes it takes a monster to kill a monster. And then they all ride off together. We find out Jake Johnson's character was brought back to life again, so he's not ghost Jake Johnson sitting, you know, being like, that's gonna get you, man. Yeah, it's like none of that. So what did I think of this plot? Honestly, the first act I think is decent. It's decent. It steals a lot from the 99 Mummy as far as plot-wise, but I thought it was good enough that I was kind of getting into it there. But then the second act is, let's do Dark Universe stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but that's not the Mummy. You know, you're just doing Dark Universe stuff. Can we get back to them? I love Russell Crowe. Love what he's doing there. Can't wait to see him in the other movies because he's a great actor, doing a great performance here. I love Dr. Jekyll. I love Mr. Hyde. He's like, oh, weird, like, no one can help you here, bub. It's just me and you. Like, oh, Mr. Hyde, you character. But it's not the Mummy. It's just what you're trying to do for Dark Universe, and that's cool, but it's nothing to do with this film. You're just off in your own world over here. And we need to get back to the Mummy here. But the third act, you're kind of already disinterested because you've been pulled into all that Dark Universe stuff. And then things just kind of go kind of crazy, weird action that's all cool, but it's like, we set up this really cool horror tone at the beginning that, you know, was getting mishandled, but there were some nice little horror beats in there. And then it just kind of keeps getting shot down by either weird subplots that aren't going to be resolved in this film, or, you know, action that doesn't even resemble the horror that was in the first part of the movie, and constant comedy beats that need to just shut up and end so we can actually enjoy the horror or the action of a scene. So it's a mess, honestly, through and through. If you see me in this review like rushing through that second and third act, because not a lot happens. Like, honestly, that first act is where a lot of the ground base happens, and then the second and third act are just kind of these long-winded discussions about monsters in the future and what will happen in Amunet, and I don't know, it's just not very much anything interesting going on in it. I tried my best to like accept it, but it's very, very flawed, and the comedy beats are gratingly annoying at this point. Every time you have something cool or interesting happening, it gets cut off by a comedy beat. That's going to tick a lot of people off who are horror fans and love The Mummy for its horror, or who are, you know, the action fans who love that 99 film and, you know, want to see that come back. It gets constantly cut off by terrible comedy that isn't helping. And if they would just let the comedy or the action or the horror sit in, then throw in a little comedy beats that's better written than this, you might have something. But, you know, as it is, it's pretty bad. So let's go through some of the characters here, some of the people who acted. I kind of already went through it already, but Tom Cruise is the main protagonist here. He's a Tom Cruise character. He's funny, which is why I understand why there's some comedy beats, because I know Tom Cruise is a funny guy, and he likes throwing that in his movies, whether it's Mission Impossible or Jack Reacher or whatever it may be. He likes those comedy beats in his action films, and I respect that as a guy. I mean, he's very much an older action movie star at this point. He's starting to get into that upper echelon sort of thing, where he's getting to like the the Sylvester Stallone age of older action actors, but he's still getting good work. I mean, he still looks young, even though he's 50 something. Even Russell Crowe calls him young boy, and I'm like, all right, calm down. He's like 55. He's not that young. But yeah, no. he does fine. He's honestly, if I think though the problem may have been he was trying to throw too much action or too much comedy into the film because that's his styling. But I don't necessarily blame it on him. I'll get into later who I'm blaming this on. But it's not Tom Cruise. I think that's just naturally who he is, and I think he saw the script and he's like, oh, it's kind of like action comedy horror, like Brendan Fraser did. I can probably do that. And to be fair, if you're comparing Brendan Fraser to Tom Cruise, very similar in performance. I love Brendan Fraser in The Mummy. I love Tom Cruise. Who's acting a lot like Brendan Fraser in The Mummy. So some might call it, just repeating the same thing over, but I thought it was fun enough. I liked it. Annabelle Wallis, who plays archaeological girl, or Jenny, I guess her name was Jenny. Annabelle Wallis was fine, but I honestly didn't see a reason to keep her in there. Like, I don't feel like she added a ton to it, other than the beginning where she's talking about like the sarcophagus and the hieroglyphs and everything of that nature. I understood why she was there for that, but afterwards, like, there's not a lot of reason for her to be there, just except for that ending scene where we have to make Tom Cruise set. Like, all right, I guess it's cool. I don't know. It's something I'll have to see if they throw over in future Dark Universe films and what they do with that character. But for now, I don't see a purpose to it. I think it's kind of... So honestly, for the second and third act, she's kind of just like, and I was Russell Crowe's henchman, and okay, I guess. All right, fine. Sophia Patel is Aminette. Great. I love Aminette in this film. I think she's a great... I like her, like, weird, like, Egyptian talking and how she looks. Sophia Patel is great. Sometimes she just gets put in bad films, but I think she did a great job as the Mummy. It's sad that the film around her isn't very good, but I think she did a great job as Aminette. But sadly, it wasn't a good movie to hold her up with. Jake Johnson as Jake Johnson. Not a fit for this movie. Honestly, you already have Tom Cruise doing the action and comedy beats for the film. You don't really need Jake Johnson. Like, I kind of hesitated on whether we should keep Jenny in this film, but I thought, at the beginning she was necessary, and I'm fine with that. But you do not need Jake Johnson in this movie. There's no point to him. He's just kind of ghost guy that leads Tom Cruise down into the tomb where the stone is. And he's not really necessary. He's kind of annoying. He shows up with weird comedy beats, like I mentioned before with the bus scene. I don't understand why they kept him in this film. It's not necessary. I kind of hated him in this film. It's pretty bad. Let's see, Russell Crowe. I already mentioned Russell Crowe's amazing. I loved Henry Jekyll. I loved Mr. Hyde. They're both great, like, performances that I've loved from them. There's not really anyone else in this film. I think Courtney B. Vance was a colonel who played a superior officer. Oh, was that not Ernie Hudson? Was that Courtney B. Vance? Hold on. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I thought it was Ernie Hudson as Tom Cruise's general or colonel, but no, that's Courtney B. Vance. So sorry about that. I'll probably have to edit that in when I do the editing for this episode. But yeah, Courtney B. Vance is the colonel for this film. So yeah, sorry, that's my mistake there. But yeah, overall, this cast is actually fairly well done. The only one I thought was really bad was Jake Johnson, and Annabelle Wallis was just like, eh. But like, everyone else in here is really good. The problem, though, I think, is with the director. The director of this film is Alex Kurtzman, who is a writer who's done a bunch of big blockbuster films. If you've seen ever a big blockbuster film within the past 5-6 years, you've probably seen, it was probably written by Alex Kurtzman, and I believe I forget the name of the gentleman he works with generally, but he has a guy who he writes with on all of his big, Robert Orsi, that's the name I'm looking for, who he writes with. But for this film, he didn't write with Robert Orci. He wrote with John Spates, the guy who's doing Spider-Man Homecoming. Please let Spider-Man Homecoming be really good. But yeah, he was working on the script with them, and you can tell this film got pushed around a lot because this thing has 4 producers, 3 screenplay writers, 3 people working on the story. So that's like 6 writers on this film. Yeah, it's messy. It must have gotten thrown around a half a dozen different times in screenwriting because this thing's a mess. Whether it's, the weird pacing, badly timed things, poorly written jokes, bad characters that don't need to be in the film, just, the act 1 having all of this, like, important, like, act 1 being, like, a good setup followed by a fairly decent setup. I don't know, that's not good, but fairly decent setup followed by, like, just 2 and 3 being followed with just, like, nothing, like, just action beats and weird comedy beats and mentions to the future, and that's it. I want to say Alex Kurtzman, I see a lot of what he's going for with his direction, and not all of it's bad. Honestly, some of it's really good. I actually like some of it, but he uses a lot of the same techniques over and over again, and it gets really annoying. Like, he uses the same, like, flint striking steel effect over and over again. He uses the shots of Amunet in the, like, desert screens over and over again. He does the thing where, like, the horrific thing is happening in the background and you can just see it blurry out of view sort of thing. Like, that's a cool idea. I like horror films that do that, where it's like the horrific thing that's happening is right behind them and you can see it but they can't, and it's kind of blurry and out of focus. But he does it so much it's noticeable. By the end I was just like, oh, I've seen that like 7 times and I'll stop doing the same horrific shot over and over again. And it was starting to get on my nerves. I was honestly about ready to be done with this film when I was heading out. I was like, it's not working. You're doing the same things over and over again, the same effects, the same thing. The second and third acts are filled with nothing plot-wise beyond a few minor things that happen at the end. It honestly is just a mess of a film throughout. And if I have to give this film a rating, there are some good things. I do notice that Alex Kurtzman is, like, if we're going by directing wise, I'm not even talking about writing wise. Writing wise, this film gets a fat F because it's terrible and awful. But if we're going directing wise, this is like a C plus. Like, I can see a lot of good directing beats in there. But the problem is he's using those same really good directing beats over and over again to the point where it's getting nauseating and I hate it. And he just doesn't bring enough to the table to, like, make the film more fulfilled within itself. It just feels like you're using the same techniques over and over again to do the same thing over and over again to have storylines that don't matter to me, or so boring that they care so little that it's like, well, I guess that's the end of that scene. And like, it got to the point where, like, having the same effect over and over again was just getting me really bored with this film, and I was wanting to head out because I just didn't care enough. Honestly, this is about like a 2 out of 10. Honestly, I can see where they're going with this film, but it's just poorly put together, man. Like, the writing is awful. The comedy beats are annoying. Using the same effects over and over again is annoying. Jake Johnson is annoying. I was just kind of sitting there like, this is the movie. This is what we're putting up with. I couldn't put up with the Mummy too much longer. It was just kind of getting on my nerves after a while, and I do want to see where they go with the Dark Universe thing. That is interesting to me. I think there are some interesting things you can do with the Dark Universe out of what's been established in this film. But you have to do it better than this film did, because this film is just abusing Dark Universe, to, like, build a second act around it. And I don't think that's what you need to do with that film. So 2 out of 10. This film is really bad. I don't recommend anyone seeing it. But, like, okay, if it's on Netflix, maybe give it a watch. If you were really, really excited about seeing The Mummy, I say maybe wait till Netflix or something of that nature and watching it then. Maybe you'll get a good time out of it. But don't expect anything much out of this film. It's honestly pretty bad. But those are my thoughts on The Mummy. I wasn't too big on it, but maybe you are. And if you are, comment down below and let me know what you thought of the film. Honestly, they're going to continue with this Dark Universe anyway. It looks like it's making a good bit of money overseas, so, good. I do want to see this Dark Universe be somewhat fulfilled. I just need to see them do better than The Mummy, because The Mummy, not helping your favors there, guys. So, with that in mind, guys, please go down below, subscribe, like, comment, follow me on my Twitter for all the latest, @KyloRoss18. And until next time, I'll see you later.